What's going on today, guys? Hope you guys are doing well. This video was requested by, I believe his name was NBA JJ or something like that. So if you guys want me to talk about anything specific in any of my videos, please just put it in the comment section down below and be happy to make a video about it. But he was wanting to know what my time at Sysco was like and what I thought about touch freight and if I thought doing food delivery was worth it, because some guys can make $100,000 doing that, and that's certainly true. I'll start off with giving the caveat of this is not going to be a trash talking video about how much food delivery sucks and you're a sucker if you do it. I'm just going to tell you about my experience, and again, at the end of the day, I don't have any ill will towards Sysco. I just had more of a problem with how they did things as a company. But at the end of the day, there's very many reasons why I'm not in food delivery anymore, and I'll get into it. So starting off, obviously, food delivery is, for those of you who don't know, very, very hard. It's a lot of physical work. And that was not necessarily even my problem with it, because I enjoy being physical at work. It was more of just how things were run logistically within the company, and then a few things that happened between my boss and I as well. And it wasn't even necessarily the pay either. Now, I don't think the stress that I endured was worth the pay. However, I don't think I was paid unfairly either. I just think at a certain point, some things are not worth the stress, and regardless of how many dollars you're getting per hour, right? So I was paid $26.50 or something an hour like that, and I was paid overtime after 40 hours. I was in South Dakota at the time, specifically Rapid City, and this was 4 years ago now. This is the end of 2021. So at the time, I thought it was a decent rate, and it's not bad money at all, even by today's standards, I guess, depending upon what you're doing now. But the first biggest issue I ran into and realized this is just how things are, at least with Sysco, where I was that the equipment was just horribly run down, from the trailers being the ramps specifically, which, if you don't know, in food delivery, basically you have a reefer trailer. There's a metal ramp that runs up to the back of the reefer trailer that you pull out, and you're supposed to use that to dolly off the items of food that you do. And we were specifically running routes that were anywhere from 20 to 28 stops and 15 or so hundred cases. So it was a lot of work. And again, that's not necessarily the issue. It was more of getting back to the ramps, specifically where I dealt with a lot of ice, especially at that time of year, a lot of ice, snow, and rain. And those ramps are supposed to have metal pegs that give you extra grip when you stand on them, so that when you're guiding down your dolly on the ramp, you're given extra grip so that you're not just on a metal slide when you have those ice, rain, or snowy conditions. However, the ramps on all the trailers were horribly run down to where they didn't even have any pegs. And so it created an obvious safety hazard when I did have those weather conditions, because again, in food delivery, just like fuel hauling, you're delivering in any and every kind of weather, regardless of, what the road conditions are like. So when I did hit ice or snow or rain, I would have to cut my loads that I would put on my dolly by about half, just so that I wasn't falling off the ramp or sliding off the ramp, because they were all so worn down that it wasn't even safe to fully load up your dolly to be able to get things done. And so that cut down on your productivity, and that cut into your allotted delivery time, which I'll get into in a minute. It was just another major source of stress, because despite them being run down and me following up with my boss several times about getting the ramps replaced on these trailers, it never happened. None of the, short of a DOT violation, they did not do anything above and beyond that to fix either the trailers or the trucks, which were also constantly breaking down. The trucks we were using were 2010 to 2014 Volvos with anywhere from 600,000 to 700,000 miles, and they would break down on best case scenario once a month, but more realistically, they were breaking down once every week, and that added to an already long and arduous day. So that was the main issue, was the equipment. The next biggest issue that I ran into and caused problems was the way that they packed the truck. And so basically how it works is when you show up in the morning, you check your trailer that you're assigned, and the distribution center has loaded it, or should have loaded it, in a way that when you open up the back of the reefer trailer, the first stops are towards the door, and then the last stops are towards the front of the trailer, opposite of the door. What would often happen on pretty much a daily basis would be that you would have to break down the pallets, and everything was set on a pallet that were about 4 to 5 feet wide, and then about 6 to 7 feet tall, sometimes even taller than me. Boxes or bunches of boxes, or even just sack of potatoes, would be wrapped up in a plastic wrap. So you'd have to cut the wrap, and then more often than not, they would put one item that you needed, generally the last item that you needed for a specific stop, at the very bottom of a pallet. So you'd have to break down an entire pallet just to fish out something at the very, very bottom. And again, just something else that added to the stress level and cut back into your allotted time that you were given for that specific delivery. And that leads into the next biggest issue, which was the company was the corporate office was the one who set the time for specific deliveries. So even though you could have to unload, 40 boxes of milk or, 20 bags of potatoes, they could expect you to get it done in 15 minutes or in 20 minutes, when realistically, if you have to go upstairs or go downstairs with your dolly, or go in a very specific way and not be able to use an elevator, or to go behind something, it was always, generally speaking, in the most inconvenient spots for you that they wanted the food delivered, which again is fine. It's their preference, their food. But it cut into your time, regardless of if you were actually running or not, which I ran my butt off pretty much every single day. And I'm not even kidding. Like, I would go as fast as I could unloading. And then when I had offloaded whatever food that they wanted, I would sprint back to the truck with my dolly and continue unloading onto my dolly and try and get the stop, each and every stop, done as fast as possible. Even with me running, and I mean running, I was not able to complete the stop in what they allotted as a reasonable amount of time, about half the time, simply because of, again, all those various factors like the ramp, weather, or if a customer wanted to talk to me about something that they had gotten in error, or whatever it may be. There was so many different factors that were outside of my control that would generally happen on a daily basis, or at least a weekly basis, that more often than not, even if you were running your butt off, you weren't going to complete that stop in the allotted time. Now you might be able to catch up at the end of the day, which is what I did about half the time that I was behind on time. I would, be able to catch up, but sometimes you wouldn't. Or sometimes you'd be able to catch up and you were finishing up, and then the tractor would break down, And if you were behind about 20 or 30 minutes behind the timeline of when they thought you should be done with each stop, I would get a call from my boss and he would say, "Hey, what's going on? Are you having problems or whatever?" And I would have to say, "Yeah, there's X, Y, and Z happened," or the ramp is run down and it's icy out and I can only do so much without actually creating an injury for myself. So it is what it is. So having to explain that constantly when I was already running my butt off. Now my diet wasn't great, but I still ended up losing, because of how physically hard it was. I ended up losing about 5 to 10 pounds when I started doing food delivery, because it was so arduous. Being micromanaged like that, just especially when it was never practically me that was at fault. It was some other various factor that is just part of life that can happen, especially when you have that many factors at play for delivering food, that caused me to be behind on my allotted delivery time or whatever it was. So that really drove me up the wall. And then probably the next biggest thing for me was being lied to directly by my boss. So before I got hired, I had a conversation with my boss, and I asked him, I said, so what is the earliest start time I would possibly have? And he said 4 a.m. And I said, okay, anything earlier does not, because my body does not adjust well to midnight or 1 or 2 a.m. start times for whatever reason. It just doesn't. So it's a safety concern driving while I'm not, fully awake. So I'm just not going to be able to do it if it's any earlier than that. And he said, no, 4 a.m. is your earliest start time. So I take the job, I go through training. And then after I'm on my own, about a month and a half later, it is now the end of the year. It is now how Sysco does it at the end of the year, is when they do their route bids, where starting from the most senior to the least senior guys, everybody bids on a route that they want, so the senior guys get the best routes with generally the easiest kind of work, and that's fine. I don't have any issues against that. That's fair. And the guys who have been there the least amount of time, which was me, get stuck with the worst routes. And so I found out through that route bidding that I was actually going to be stuck with a route that was starting at 12 or 1 a.m. depending upon the day. And so I talked to my boss at that point, and I said, hey, I found out through the route bidding process that I'm going to be stuck with this route that starts at midnight or 1 a.m. Did you know that was more than likely going to be the case before you hired me? And he said, yeah. And I said, okay, well, that's a problem, because I now need to look for a different job, because that's not going to work for me. This route that I'm currently on, which is 4 a.m., that works for me. So you need to figure that out. And he said, okay. Then shortly after that happened, I had a day where they packed the distribution center, packed the trailer that I was using in such a way that I had to break down 3 entire pallets for one item at the bottom of each pallet for one stop. So I had to break down 3 entire pallets for one stop, because they had put one individual item for that stop in each of those pallets that I needed for that stop. And this was 8 hours into an already arduous day. And if I had to name a thing that broke the straw on the camel's back for me of working at food delivery, it was probably that. All of those things combined ended up putting me in the mindset of, okay, I'm just gonna try, ironically enough, regional or drive in and reefer out. And that's actually my next job, was the drive in and reefer job. So ultimately, looking back on it, that was an error on my part. I should have just stuck with it and allowed my boss to try and figure it out, and done my best as much as I can. And then if I got stuck with a route that obviously wasn't going to work with me, then I should have just looked for another local job instead of trying out drive in and reefer. But it is what it is. I was just getting to the point where I hated showing up for work every single day. And not that work is going to be this fun and amazing thing, as I've mentioned before, because it's called work. But if you dread going to work every single day, it starts to stress you out. And if you're stressed out, you're losing sleep, you start to have health problems, and it's just downhill from there. So I would recommend obviously finding something that does not stress you out to that level. And you have to find that balance of Yeah, I may not exactly like what I do, but at the end of the day, you have to find something that is not going to stress you out and is going to make you dread coming into work every single day, but is something that is sustainable for the long term. Like currently, I'm very blessed. I like going to work. I'm not going to say I enjoy it because it's work, and it's at the end of the day, it's still a struggle sometimes, as work is, because it's work, not fun. But I'm not stressed out at work constantly. And for me, that's because I'm not micromanaged and I don't have all of those stressors on top of a very physically demanding job. So that being said, I didn't think it was worth it, regardless of how much money I was paid, simply because I was just stressed out and I hated showing up to work every single day. That does not mean it's going to be the case for you. Maybe you're the type of person that thrives under that kind of condition set, but for me, it was not conducive for something that would be sustainable long term. Even today, a couple months ago, the US Foods guys in my area, they were hiring for $36.50 an hour. So even at my pay rate. So is it necessarily worth it? Could be for you. It's not for me. Again, this isn't to deter anyone from doing food delivery. And I have a hell of a lot of respect for the guys who make it work, like Anthony TV. He makes a good living at it and he seems to enjoy it. So more power to him. I don't have any issues admitting when something is not going to be a good long-term fit for me. So if you guys enjoyed that video, please like and subscribe. And if you guys want me to talk again about anything specific in another video, please drop in the comment section below. Or if you think I'm wrong and you think food delivery is the best job in the world, feel free to put that down in the comment section below. Otherwise, I will see you guys on the next one. Take care. God bless.